That's a huge benefit if you can reverse the type 2 diabetes compared to lowering cholesterol, which has almost negligible benefits. Gaining an extra 6 or 7 years of life makes a difference. Gaining 3.2 days is arguably less important. So what about that other major risk factor for health span? Cancer. Again, we know that there are a lot of things that cause cancer. A lot of things are things we can't do anything about. That is, again, age and sex and family history and so on. But of the things we can do something about, once again, two factors stand out head and shoulders above everything else. Number one, smoking. So again, we know that smoking is bad. You probably shouldn't be smoking. That's okay. But number two is the diet and obesity. It is a major contributor to cancer and really outranks almost everything else you can think of in this chart, which is from the National Cancer Institute. So things that we worry about like sedentary lifestyle and alcohol and family history, occupational factors, they actually don't matter that much. What contributes heavily, other than not smoking, is the diet and avoiding obesity. So in terms of obesity, there are a number of diseases which have been identified as obesity-related cancers, and this is well established. And this includes important cancers such as breast cancer and prostate cancer and colon cancer, which are the number 2, 3, and 4 cancers in the United States. Number 1 is lung cancer, but that is mostly related to smoking as opposed to obesity. And why is this important? Because these are modifiable, that you can do something about your weight and you can do something about your type 2 diabetes. And the problem is that things have been going in the wrong direction for some time. You can see that in the United States, if you look at obesity as defined as a body mass index greater than 30, it's been steadily going up since the late 1970s. And closely behind that was the epidemic of type 2 diabetes. So if you think about how to lose weight, the most important two variables are one, what you eat, which is your diet. And there's lots of debate about what the best diet is, what what should you eat vegetables, should you eat meat, should you eat carbs, should you eat fat. There's a lot of debate, and I'm not going to get into that. But the second critical factor, if you're thinking about obesity and type 2 diabetes, is this: the fasting interval. Why? Because remember that type 2 diabetes and obesity are simply an excess of stored energy. You have too much sugar or you have too much fat. If you extend the period where you're not eating, which is fasting, then you're going to allow your body to use up that stored energy. And that's going to make a crucial difference to your weight in terms of body fat and as well as your glucose stores. If you can reverse the obesity and reverse the type 2 diabetes, then you're going to lower your risk of cardiovascular disease as well as cancer, and that's going to make a huge difference to your health span and longevity. Hi, today I'm going to be talking about the most important things to think about for health span and longevity. Hint, it's not about the cholesterol. And it's coming right up. When you're considering how to live long and healthy life, you really have to understand what diseases are the most likely to cause problems. Two diseases are by far and away the most important. Heart disease and stroke, which together comprise cardiovascular disease, is the biggest cause of death, and cancer is very close behind. And everything else, which goes down to chronic respiratory diseases and Alzheimer's, is really much less important. What contributes to cardiovascular disease? This is an analysis from 112 cohort studies in 34 countries, so over 1.5 participants. And you can see that the most important disease for death is diabetes by a long shot. you can see here that if you have diabetes, then you are at between 3 and 4 times the risk of death and also cardiovascular disease. Smoking is also a very important modifiable risk factor, but we all knew that. But however, look at cholesterol. You know, it's just not that important. If you look at it, there really is no significant rise in the rate of death with high cholesterol. So therefore, lowering your cholesterol might be important, but it's not that important, especially not compared to things such as smoking, type 2 diabetes, and high blood pressure to a lesser extent. If you have type 2 diabetes, you are about 10.7 times more likely to have heart disease. So therefore, if you can prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes, that is extremely important. Metabolic syndrome, hypertension, obesity are also important. Smoking obviously is a very important risk factor, but down here you have the so-called bad cholesterol, which is LDL. So for all that we obsess about taking drugs to lower cholesterol, it really is a much less important factor, and type 2 diabetes is really 9 or 10 times more important than LDL cholesterol. So for all the thinking we do about cholesterol, how much of a benefit are these drugs, these statins, to take to lower our cholesterol? Well, in the British Medical Journal in 2015, they did an analysis of how much you would be expected to live longer if you were to take the statins for primary prevention. That is, if you hadn't had a heart attack or stroke. And the results were quite startling, actually, because taking a statin did in fact extend your life expectancy, but how much? And the median is 3.2 days. So if you take a drug to lower your cholesterol and you live to 80 years old, you might extend it by taking that drug to 80 years and 3.2 days. So not exactly a very important risk factor. Contrast that to type 2 diabetes, which comprises most of diabetes. You can see from this graph that, for example, if you are a 40 or 50-year-old man, you would be expected to lose about 6 years of life due to that type 2 diabetes. Most of it from cardiovascular disease, but also from cancer deaths and other deaths.